least 210 killed in Israeli attack on refugee camp. South Korea on alert for more possible trash balloons. Good afternoon, you're watching World Today. I'm Jessica Lee. At least 210 people were killed in an Israeli attack on a central Gaza refugee camp, from which 4 hostages were rescued. Hamas's government media office said the number of victims from the Israeli occupation's massacre in the Nuseirat camp has risen to 210 and more than 400 wounded. The statement by the media office came after the Israeli army announced the rescue of 4 Israeli hostages in Nuseirat in an operation that they said took place under fire. Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh vowed to keep fighting after the Israeli attack on the camp, saying that his people will not surrender and the group will continue to defend its rights in the face of the criminal enemy. The Hamas government had in an earlier statement reported a toll of 94 killed in and around Nuseirat, adding that they had been taken to the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah. It said the hospital was unable to accommodate the number of fatalities and those injured, appealing for the international community and aid organizations for help. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas called for an emergency UN Security Council session on the bloody massacre that was carried out by the Israeli forces. Israeli strikes killed 2 people and sparked wildfires in southern Lebanon, with Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah announcing the death of 1 fighter. Hezbollah, a Hamas ally, has traded near daily fire with Israeli forces in the 8 months since the Gaza war began. The daily clashes have intensified in recent weeks, causing multiple brush fires on both sides of the Israel-Lebanon border and raising fears the conflict could broaden. Now, Lebanon's official national news agency said that an Israeli drone carried out an air attack with 2 guided missiles targeting a cafe in Aitarun and killing a young man and the cafe's owner. The agency also reported a violent airstrike on the border village of Qiyam. Shortly after, Hezbollah said it had launched Katyusha rockets on a town across the border in response to the Israeli attacks against southern villages and safe houses, and the targeting of civilians, notably in Aitarun, where 2 people were killed. More than 8 months of border violence, which began on the 8th of October last year, has killed at least 458 people in Lebanon, mostly fighters, but including about 90 civilians. In another development, humanitarian aid began trickling back into the devastated Gaza Strip via a rebuilt temporary pier after the structure suffered storm damage and underwent repairs in a nearby port. U.S. Central Command said today a total of approximately 492 metric tons of much-needed humanitarian assistance was delivered to the people of Gaza. Now, Gaza has been devastated by Israeli operations, now entering its 9th month, uprooting the coastal territory's population and leaving them in dire need of humanitarian aid. More than £2 million of humanitarian assistance were delivered via the pier last month, but it was damaged by high seas around a week after deliveries began. The pier was repaired in the Israeli port of Ashdod before being brought back to the Gaza coast and re-established on Friday. Now, Israel has been accused of delaying the entry of aid into Gaza, depriving the territory's 2.4 million people of clean water, food, medicines, and fuel. The plans for the pier were first announced by U.S. President Joe Biden in early March, and U.S. Army troops and vessels soon set out on a lengthy trip to the Mediterranean to build the pier. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said on Saturday that the 8 countries, an economic cooperation group of developing nations, will use all means at their disposal to ensure a ceasefire in Gaza and for humanitarian aid to reach Gazans. The D8 Organization for Economic Cooperation includes Malaysia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Egypt, Iran, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Turkey. During a press conference after an extraordinary meeting of the D8 Foreign Ministers' Council in Istanbul, Fidan also said the group had decided to support the mediation efforts by Qatar and Egypt. The group also called for a Palestinian state to be a full member of the United Nations. The Palestinians are currently a non-member observer state, a de facto recognition of statehood that was granted by the UN General Assembly in 2012. In a joint declaration, the member states demanded that all countries should stop supplying weapons and ammunition to Israel. The Philippines will continue to maintain and supply its outposts in the South China Sea without seeking permission from any other country. Now, the Philippines National Security Council said it reaffirmed its commitment to uphold its sovereign rights and jurisdiction over the Second Thomas Shoal. The country's national security advisor said its operations are conducted within its own territorial waters and exclusive economic zone, and it will not be deterred by foreign interference or intimidation. The Philippines agency issued a statement in response to China's suggestion that the Philippines must first notify Beijing over access. Now, China's foreign ministry said it will allow the Philippines to deliver supplies and evacuate personnel if Manila notifies Beijing in advance. National Security Advisor Secretary Eduardo Ano described such suggestions as absurd, nonsense, and unacceptable, adding that the Philippines will never need China's approval for any of its activities therein. However, he said the Philippines remains open to dialogue and peaceful negotiations to resolve disputes in the entire South China Sea. The former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra said he was ready to face charges of insulting the monarchy that mark a setback to a political heavyweight whose allies are currently in government. The complaint lodged by the royalist military that ousted the government of his sister Yingluck Shinawatra stems from an interview the influential tycoon gave to foreign media in 2015. Other charges include violating a computer crime law. Now, Thaksin said he would meet prosecutors on the 18th of June, but he was not concerned about the case and was ready to fight it. Thaksin denies wrongdoing and has repeatedly pledged loyalty to the crown, criticism of which is forbidden under Thailand's lèse-majesté law, one of the strictest of its kind around the world. Thaksin's case is the most high-profile case among more than 270 prosecutions in recent years under the law, which carries a maximum jail term of 15 years for each perceived insult against the royal family. Thaksin founded the populist Pheu Thai Party, and his family's parties have won all but one election since 2001, with 3 Shinawatra governments toppled by coups or court rulings. The billionaire returned to Thailand last year from 15 years of self-imposed exile, when he remained a central figure during repeated bouts of political upheaval. Coming up next, VSS Unity spaceplane undergoes final flight. An attack on Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, which left her shaken but fine, was not thought to be politically motivated. Now, a 39-year-old Polish man apprehended after hitting the Prime Minister on Copenhagen Square was remanded in custody until 20th of June, before or after appearing before a court in the Danish capital. Frederiksen's office said that she had been taken to a hospital for a checkup after the attack, which had caused a minor whiplash injury. A prosecutor said the man that attacked her was suspected of violence against a public servant and deemed a flight risk.
PT er der ikke, det er ikke vores styrende, hypotese, at der er et politisk motiv i det her, men det er noget, politiet selvfølgelig skal undersøge. Politiet har nu 12 dage til at efterforske sagen, hvor man også vil kigge på, om der skulle være noget politisk motiv bag det her.
During the hearing, the prosecution presented a statement from a doctor describing the defendant as mentally unbalanced and intoxicated. Police, meanwhile, described the man who denied being guilty of a crime as probably both under the influence of substances and drunk when arrested. The incident follows a spate of attacks on European politicians from across the political spectrum ahead of this week's EU elections. South Korea's military today said it was on alert for possibly more trash-carrying balloons arriving from North Korea, a potential response to the propaganda balloons sent this week by South Korean activists. Now, North Korea sent hundreds of balloons in 2 waves last week with bags of trash into the south, describing them as a response to anti-Pyongyang propaganda balloons sent the other way by South Korean activists. Pyongyang announced a halt to the balloons, but days later, a South Korean group called Fighters for Free North Korea said it had sent 10 balloons with USB thumb drives containing K-pop music and 200,000 leaflets against leader Kim Jong-un. Now, North Korea said it would respond with waste paper and rubbish, 100 times the amount if more South Koreans' leaflets were sent. Another group comprising North Korea's defectors said it had sent 10 balloons on Friday with 200,000 anti-Pyongyang leaflets, 100 radios and USB thumb drives containing a speech by South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol. The North Korean balloons last week landed in a number of locations in the south and were found to be carrying garbage such as cigarette butts, cardboard scrap and waste batteries. Now, Italy became the first heavyweight nation to cast votes for the EU's next parliament in a test of far-right leader Giorgia Meloni's strength at home and future influence in the bloc. Most of the European Union's 27 member countries, including powerhouses France and Germany, go to the polls today, the final day, with projected overall results due late this evening. The 2-day ballot in Italy, the EU's third largest economy with 76 of 720 seats in the new parliament, could have big consequences. Now, polls suggest Meloni's Brothers of Italy party could win with 27% of the vote, more than quadrupling its score from 2019, amid a broader surge of far-right groups across the bloc. A victory could set up Meloni as a power broker in determining whether EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen gets the backing she needs from both member states and Parliament for a second term. Meloni has been actively courted both by the centre-right von der Leyen and by French far-right leader Marine Le Pen, who wants to create a right-wing EU supergroup. Italy was voting on the same day as Slovakia, a NATO and EU member since 2004, shaken by an assassination attempt last month on Premier Robert Fico. Now, voters have rallied to Fico's Russia-friendly camp in the wake of the shooting, which he blamed on aggressive and hateful politics by the opposition. Authorities said the assassination attempt by a 71-year-old poet was politically motivated. Fico's party opposes EU arms deliveries to help Ukraine repel Russia's invasion and rails against alleged warmongers in Brussels. Now, polls show pro-European parties on the centre-right and centre-left, Liberals and Greens, will have a smaller majority than in the outgoing parliament, complicating efforts to push through new EU laws or increase EU integration. The 720-seat parliament decides with national governments on laws that govern the bloc's single market of 450 million people, its €1 trillion long-term budget, fiscal rules and legislation to prevent climate change. Another body was spotted off the coast of Libya on Saturday, a day after a Doctors Without Borders or MSF rescue ship recovered the bodies of 11 migrants in the same area of the Mediterranean Sea and said it had saved more than 160 people from boats. Now, the bodies of the 11 migrants were brought by the Italian Coast Guard to the island of Lampedusa on Saturday afternoon. The United Nations has registered more than 20,000 deaths and disappearances in the central Mediterranean since 2014, making it the most dangerous migrant crossing in the world. Italy has urged Tunisia and Libya to do more to stop would-be migrants from putting to sea. Now, it has also clamped down on the operations of rescue ships, saying they encourage people to head to Europe, something the charities deny. Now, Libya is a major jumping-off point for migrants trying to head from Africa to Europe, with the Italian island of Lampedusa the nearest European destination. According to Italy's Interior Ministry, the number of migrant arrivals in the country has dropped considerably in 2024 to just under 21,800 since the beginning of the year, compared to close to 53,300 in the same period last year. The journey can be dangerous, with more than 3,000 migrants reported to have gone missing in 2023 while attempting to cross the Mediterranean. Virgin Galactic's VSS Unity spaceplane soared through space for its 32nd and final flight on Saturday. Now, during the suborbital journey, 4 tourist astronauts could be seen floating in microgravity and looking at breathtaking views of Earth. The flight to the edge of space and back marked Virgin Galactic's second flight this year. The Galactic 7 mission carried Turkish, US and Italian passengers to an altitude of about 88.51 kilometers on a flight lasting slightly more than an hour. The space tourism company said that mission took off from and returned to Spaceport America in New Mexico on Saturday. A 4th-generation spaceship now in production and expected to enter commercial service in 2026. A new chapter for the company's space exploration efforts that promises nearly 8 times the speed of current flights, drastically increasing the frequency and accessibility of space travel. Turkish astronaut Tuva Atasever carried Turkish and Azerbaijan flags to space alongside a fabric significant to the Palestinian people, acknowledging the current war raging in Gaza. Now, 7 experiments were conducted aboard the mission, including one study on insulin dispensation in microgravity. Still to come in sports, Iga Świątek clinches 3rd straight French Open title. First up is football. The historic Maracana Stadium welcomed Brazilian footballer Thiago Silva amid fireworks and thousands of cheering fans over his triumphant return to his hometown club, Fluminense. Although his debut will not happen until July, over 55,000 ecstatic fans celebrated his return by singing and dancing from their seats at the iconic stadium. The honour of handing over the number 3 shirt to Silva fell to one of the club's oldest employees, Mr. Geronimo, adding a touch of class to the presentation ceremony. Among the attendees were current Fluminense stars such as Marcelo, Felipe Melo, Ganso, Cano and Renato Augusto. The stadium was a sea of fireworks and cheers as the veteran defender walked around the pitch and waved to the fans. The former Chelsea defender said at a news conference later that he did not come to walk around. Silva, 39, played at the Fluminense club from 2007 to 2009 before he moved to Europe and found success at AC Milan, Paris Saint-Germain and Chelsea. He signed a 2-year deal with his former club after leaving Chelsea at the end of the Premier League season. Now, Silva is signed to Fluminense until June 2026. Canada's new football coach, Jesse Marsch, says he is confident his young side can handle whatever France throws at them in their friendly match today, despite being thumped by Netherlands 4-0 on Thursday. Having only been named head coach of Canada's men's national team less than a month ago, Marsch has been thrown into a series of early tests, having already faced number 7 ranked Netherlands with number 2 ranked France on deck. Midfielder Stefan Eustaquio said he and the squad are relishing the chance to play top teams even as they prepare for their June 20th Copa America opener against world champions Argentina.
you have to be more creative with how to get certain concepts and tactics and strategies across to the players. You can't always work on the pitch intensively the way you would want. However, these players are used to being in this environment, in a national team environment, where they have to have different ways of learning than always applying it on the pitch. And they've been very intelligent with their ways of adapting. So again, it gives me real optimism on how quickly we can convert this into what we want it to become.
In tennis news, Iga Świątek strengthened her reputation as the Queen of Clay by capturing a third straight French Open crown with a crushing 6-2, 6-1 victory over 12th seed Jasmine Paolini on Saturday to claim her 5th Grand Slam title. Now, Świątek's 21st straight victory at her happiest hunting ground put her in 4th place in the list of longest winning streaks at Roland Garros in the Open era, behind only Chris Evert, Monica Seles and Justin Henin. The 23-year-old, who arrived in Paris in the form of her life, having lifted titles in Madrid and Rome, extended her run of victories on clay this year to a career-best 19 matches and celebrated with her 4th French Open title in 5 years. Świątek became only the 3rd woman to win the tournament 3 years running. At 23, her 4 Roland Garros titles is the same number Rafael Nadal, the record 14-time men's champion, had at the same age. For the 28-year-old Paolini, it was a sorry conclusion, at least in singles, to an otherwise brilliant fortnight in the French capital. The world number 15 had won a total of 4 matches in 16 Grand Slam appearances before advancing to the 4th round of the Australian Open in January. Let's take a look at cycling. Slovenia's Primož Roglič exhibited his tactics as he left it late to surge over the finishing line on Saturday's Queen stage of the Criterium du Dauphiné. The 2022 Dauphiné winner streaked away from the yellow jersey group inside the last kilometre to win the hilly 155-kilometre stage 7 race from Albertville to Samoans. USA's Matteo Jorgensen and Italian Giulio Ciccone came in 2nd and 3rd respectively. Back-to-back stage victories extend Roglic's lead in the general classification, which he claimed from Belgian rival Remco Evenepoel after winning Friday's stage. Roglic leads Visma's Jorgensen by 1 minute and 2 seconds in the overall ranking, with Canadian stage 4 winner Derek G in 3rd place. Spaniard Marc Soler of Team UAE initially broke away as part of a trio accompanied by Italians Davide Formolo and Lorenzo Fortunato 20 kilometers into the race. Roglic sat back in the peloton, which was expertly controlled by his teammates, before Soler went out on his own on Col de la Ramas and sat in front of his pursuers as he crested the peak. He then widened the gap on the peloton when he entered the daunting final ascent. But it was not enough, as the yellow jersey group ruthlessly reeled him in before overtaking him, denying Soler a maiden Dauphiné stage win. Zoo celebrates biggest hatching of penguin chicks in over a decade. That and more up next in our Offbeat segment. Britain's Chester Zoo celebrated the birth of 11 penguin chicks, which it says is the most to hatch during hatching season in more than a decade. The latest additions to the zoo are of the Humboldt penguin species, which the zoo says are becoming increasingly rare and are now listed as vulnerable to extinction by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. The team manager of parrots and penguins at Chester Zoo, Zoe Sweetman, said as keepers, their main role in raising the new youngsters is to ensure the adult penguins have all they need. Now, this includes providing extra fish, which the parents swallow, churn into a high-protein soup, and then regurgitate to feed the chicks. Now, Sweetman also explained the thought process behind naming the chicks, noting that each year the team chooses a new naming theme for the little penguins. With 11 to name, she said they could have chosen to name after an entire football team, but they have decided to go with plants. Now, citing some of the names, she said that nettle and thistle are the more spiky characters among the group, whereas tulip and daffodil have colourful personalities. Like a mini Mount Rushmore, a vintage Mercedes is emerging from a pile of limestone boulders on the edge of a small Croatian town. The life-size sculpture is a homage to thousands of emigrants who proudly returned home from Germany at the wheel of the ultimate status symbol. Like many poorer areas across Southeast Europe and Turkey, Imotsky sent thousands of its sons and daughters to work in Germany as guest workers in the 1960s and 1970s. And those that returned home driving a Mercedes-Benz were seen as having made it.
U čast naših iseljenika koji su kupili tu auto, oni su ošli zaista zaraditi da kupe jednu kravu, jedno biciklo. Jer su se počeli putevi probijati tada 70. godina kod nas. Naravno šta su kupili su Mercedesa. Doveli su ga tu, ostavili su ga nama u nasljeđe i s te zahvalnosti zaista radimo njima, a šta drugo nego Mercedes.
The people of Imotsky remain huge fans of the brand. Now, half of the area's 16,000 registered vehicles are Mercedes. As well as being a synonym of success, Mercedes-Benz has become deeply embedded in the identity of the region and its people. In the 1970s, nearly a fifth of Imotsky's population was working abroad, with some 9,000 living in Germany alone. With a resolution above 3.2 gigapixels, a nearly 3-ton weight, and the ambitious task of carrying out an unprecedented decade-long exploration, the largest digital camera ever built for optical astronomy is ready to be installed under the clear skies of northern Chile. The pieces required to assemble the Vera C. Rubin Observatory traveled in several vehicles to the summit of Cerro Pachon in the Coquimbo region.
The camera itself weighs about 3,000 kilograms, sort of a medium-sized car weight, and all of the cooling equipment and all of the filters and everything that we needed for operations are now on the summit and ready for checkout and hopefully for installation a little bit later this year.
According to its website, the Rubin Observatory is a complex, integrated system consisting of an 8-meter wide field ground-based telescope, the camera, and an automated data processing system. It will generate approximately 20 terabytes of data per night, and its 10-year exploration will produce a catalog database of 15 petabytes. The goal of the exploration will be to understand the nature of dark energy and dark matter in the universe, as well as to study the possibility of Earth colliding with asteroids or stars and planets close to the Sun. And that's it for this afternoon. In our top story, at least 210 killed in Israeli attack on refugee camp. I'm Jessica Lee. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for joining us.